Daniela's life promised to be as bright and sunny as Spain itself. She was born in a small but cozy town, the only daughter of wonderful parents who were the meaning of her life. The girl excelled in school, practiced dancing, singing, and dreamed of a brilliant career like Montserrat Caballé's. Everything seemed too cloudless. The fairy tale in which Daniela was a princess ceased to be kind when she was barely 17. As preparations for the school graduation and exams were in full swing, a simple phone call turned everything upside down. When an indifferent voice on the other end of the line said, "Your parents were in an accident." In that dreadful car crash, which forever divided Daniela's life into before and after, her mother died instantly, and her father was taken to intensive care. He passed away 3 hours later on the operating table. As the compassionate elderly nurse who was on duty at the hospital later told the girl, the surgeon who operated on her father had only recently graduated from university. Moreover, the provincial hospital lacked the necessary equipment for such a severe case and even the rare blood type her father needed for transfusion. After the funeral, Daniela firmly decided to forget about her childhood dream. She preferred the light of operating room lamps to the glamour of stage spotlights. Surgery might not be a feminine profession, but if saving someone's life would bring some meaning to her own existence. She got into medical school on her first attempt. The first 2 years flew by like a single day. The girl immersed herself in her studies. Without even striving to be the best, she showed brilliant results. Teachers predicted a bright future for her in medicine, but Daniela wanted only one thing: to keep the promise she made to her parents then, at the cemetery, to save someone's life. The second time the ground slipped from under Daniela's feet was when he appeared in the department, the new young lecturer. Incredibly resembling her father, equally tall, cheerful, with mischievous sparks in his kind, affectionate eyes. The handsome Nicholas was liked by all the female students in the course without exception, but he paid special attention only to one, sad, talented Daniela. Their romance, which had to be kept secret until the end of university, developed as swiftly as hot Spanish flamenco. The girl was once again blissfully happy, like she was in childhood. The all-encompassing, all-conquering, or so it seemed then, love replaced the melancholic loneliness. She felt like a little vulnerable girl again, next to Nicholas, who was 14 years her senior. With him, it was as warm and peaceful as in her parents' home. It seemed like it would always be like this now. The desire to save the world and other people's lives faded away immediately after the wedding. She wanted to build only one life, theirs with Nicholas, one for the two of them. While her husband pursued a successful scientific career, Daniela gave birth to 2 children, first, a charming daughter resembling an angel and her beloved mother, and then a son. The woman was absolutely happy, melting into her family. It seemed like there was nothing else to dream about: a huge house outside the city, a delightful garden with fragrant hydrangeas, healthy, cheerful children, and, of course, the most beloved and loving husband in the world. Was everything again too good to be true? There are questions that it's better not to receive answers to, no matter how much you may want to know the truth. Which is easier, the bitter truth or the sweet lie? Until now, no one can definitively claim. One evening, after a family celebration to which her husband's close friends were invited, Daniela overheard her husband's conversation with his former classmate. He was a successful practicing surgeon and was interested to know from his friend if he regretted leaving the field of surgery for academia. "You were the youngest among us surgeons, always saying that you couldn't live without the surgical drive, when you realized that someone's life is in your hands. And suddenly, overnight, you abandon your beloved profession and return as a lecturer to the university. Where did such a change in plans and moods come from?" Daniela herself had often wondered why such a superb specialist preferred to remain a theoretician. She had heard about some tragic story that had happened even not because of his fault. But every doctor has their own graveyard, cynically, but it's a fact. The inadvertently eavesdropped dialogue that evening was soon forgotten. Nicholas switched the conversation to another topic. "Probably fate. It means I'm more needed in science than for my patients. Let's talk about something more pleasant." The men switched to political debates, and Daniela became interested, or rather, even important, in getting an answer to the question that had remained unanswered for 10 years. Nicholas often took his wife to various symposiums and scientific club meetings. She knew how to impress and contribute to conversations on any medical topic. This time, at one such event when the discussion turned to the value of human life, Daniela remembered and told her husband's colleagues about her youthful dream to save someone's life someday. She talked for a long time about the importance of fighting to the end, as long as there is any chance of salvation. You should always fight to the end, regardless of circumstances, because there are no justifications for death. After all, each human life is more important to someone than their own. Daniela became so engrossed in her inspiring speech that she didn't even notice Nicholas leaving the room and going home for the first time in 10 years, alone, without her. Later, arriving by taxi, she encountered another unpleasant surprise at home. Her husband was heavily intoxicated. The bewildered woman had never seen him like this. He was crying, uttering some incoherent nonsense about murder, about there being no blood in the hospital, and that he had no more strength. I still wouldn't have been able to. No one stopped me. I said I could, but no one believed, and I couldn't. He died, and now I'm alive, and he could have. He had a family. The agitated woman, resisting some incomprehensible bad feelings, struggled to put her husband to bed, hoping that by morning everything would be forgotten, and he would wake up as his old self, the kind, cheerful Nicholas. But the troubling premonitions didn't take long to materialize. The next day marked the beginning of the end. An unpredictable, like any disaster, absurd end, which made Daniela grow up, rethink life, and start anew from a clean slate of a turned page. Waking up, Nicholas decided to unburden himself and finally tell the truth to his beloved wife. If only he could foresee what consequences this revelation would bring for him. With unbearable coldness gripping her frozen heart, Daniela listened to the story of a man who had instantly transformed from beloved to dreadful and alien. It was a tale of how a dying man, injured in a car accident, was brought to the hospital where the young surgeon worked. He had lost a lot of blood then, needing a transfusion urgently. Time was ticking away. But there was no rare fourth-group blood available at the hospital, and transporting the patient to another clinic was not an option anymore. Waiting for the blood to arrive was also out of the question. I was the only surgeon in that rural hospital, so I had to make the hardest decision of my life. The brave young doctor decided to operate as best as he could. But the patient died half an hour after the operation began. The most terrifying part of Nicholas's confession was that his excessive self-confidence was to blame for what happened. For 10 years, I've been reliving this story over and over again. Now, having thought it all through, I realize I could have saved that poor man if only I had asked for help from my colleagues and been a little more experienced. But I still can't bring myself to operate after that incident. Every time I step into the operating room, it all comes crashing down on me, as if it happened yesterday. When Daniela asked if he remembered the relatives of the patient, Nicholas admitted, "I know his wife died in the same accident, but his daughter survived. I never had the courage to look her in the eyes. I wanted to meet her, to tell her everything, but I knew that there was no point in justifying myself. Nothing can be changed now." Nicholas had heard that Daniela's parents died when she was a teenager. But Daniela didn't like to talk about it, so he knew nothing about how her parents had died. However, in answering Daniela's question and looking into her eyes, now so different after 10 years, he understood everything. The world collapsed for both of them, from all sides at once. But they had children. There was a continuation, which was not negated by the revealed truth or the unbearable pain. Although it was difficult for both of them to overcome this pain, let alone endure it. But they had to overcome it. To continue living with the understanding that there would never be one life for the two of them again. Thus, for a family that had been blissfully happy just yesterday, a topic emerged that could not be discussed. They never returned to it, carefully avoiding it, but something irreparably broke in the family and in these people. They still went to sleep and had breakfast together. Nicholas still kissed his wife goodbye before going to work, but he returned home later with each passing day. Living together was possible, but it felt fake and meaningless. And then, as if scripted in a bad movie, where there must always be a mistress, she appeared. Light, without stories and past, beautiful, with far-reaching plans. Daniela found out about her immediately and, listening to herself, realized that she still loved her husband. She didn't want to lose her life, even if it was as strange as it was now. He was the father of her children. She had been happy with him for 10 sunny, joyful years. But he left. Simply, without discussion or clarification of the relationship. He left for her, classical, promising to help the children. Daniela felt not just abandoned, but cruelly betrayed. Betrayed twice, 10 years ago then, in the operating room, and now as if again in the operating room, with her soul cut out. The former spouse helped the children briefly, and his new family, a child, appeared as well, and Daniela's last hopes for his return finally vanished. They had to sell their beautiful, large house, full of happy memories and good events, and move into her parents' old city apartment. But this reminded her of the promise she made to her deceased parents. More than 10 years passed after obtaining her surgeon's diploma and practicing in the hospital. To support herself and her children, she had to hastily find work, but no reputable clinic would hire a certified surgeon who had never performed a single operation. Almost despairing of hopelessness, loneliness, and poverty, Daniela stumbled upon an old advertisement for a provincial hospital. They needed a surgeon. Without hesitation, she went to the specified address for an interview. Fate often plays cruel jokes on us. But wise people say that everything happens for a reason. And if we fail to draw the right conclusions from past lessons, life presents us with new challenges, giving us the opportunity to correct our mistakes. As she approached the clinic, she recognized the place. This was where her father had died in surgery. Struggling to overcome the wild desire to run away as far as possible, Daniela entered the hospital and emerged as a surgeon an hour and a half later. God never sends trials greater than a person can bear. The team at her new workplace, with old memories in mind, surprisingly turned out to be very friendly. Friends were immediately found, especially the new head nurse Paula, who became close with Daniela. She was wise, sincere, and genuinely herself. It was to her that Daniela was able to open up and tell the sad story of her unpredictable life, intertwined with her beloved father, husband, and this clinic. After their candid conversation, Daniela felt much lighter, loneliness receded, the desire to work returned, and she felt ready to move forward again. Remembering the fateful conversation with her husband about her father's death being caused by the lack of necessary equipment and donor blood, Daniela took action. Paula, despite wanting to support her friend, tried to bring her back down to earth. No one will help a provincial clinic. Everyone has long forgotten about us and shrugged it off. But the dormant sense of justice and the promise made to her parents wouldn't allow her to give up or throw in the towel. I will prove that nothing is impossible. And if you keep knocking on closed doors, they will eventually open, or I'll break them down. 2 years later, the old clinic was unrecognizable. New equipment, full provision with modern medications, and good repairs were the result of numerous requests, persistent demands, and painstaking work without weekends, working 30-hour days and seemingly endless hours. New specialists started coming to the hospital, another good surgeon appeared, and Daniela became the chief physician. A blood donation station even appeared in the hospital. Only Paula knew the price at which her friend had achieved such success. You literally live in your office. When was the last time you spent time with your children, looked at yourself in the mirror, or did something for yourself? You can't live just for work. And maybe this is exactly my salvation. When I work, there's no time for sad thoughts or memories of him. There's also something else. It's as if I'm correcting someone's mistake or preparing for something very, very important. I can't shake off this strange premonition of some grand event happening very soon. In recent times, she had been offered jobs at more prestigious clinics, promising good pay and fast career advancement. But the young chief physician was adamant. I know that it's no coincidence that I ended up working at this clinic, and precisely at this time. Daniela now knew a little about Nicholas Daniels' life. She had heard that he had also quit teaching at the university, that at the demand of his second wife, he had gotten into the pharmaceutical business. They say the business wasn't going well. Mutual acquaintances often saw Nicholas intoxicated, saying he was constantly complaining about life and his two mistakes. Meanwhile, Daniela, in addition to reorganizing the clinic, had started performing surgeries herself. At first, it was appendectomies and minor injuries, but lately, she had taken on more serious cases. Her colleagues never ceased to be amazed by her composure and focus in the operating room. Every movement seemed to be guided by some unknown plan. She could even predict the exact time of the upcoming surgery in advance, and it never exceeded 3 hours. I can't afford to get tired. A tired surgeon's hands falter, and operating for more than 3 hours in a row is too difficult a task. A doctor's fatigue cannot justify a patient's death. That August evening, there was an abnormal heat. It seemed not only the scorching asphalt was melting but also the people around. Local radio reported increased accidents on the roads, and as if to confirm it, sirens of rescuers wailed outside the hospital windows. Paula rushed through the corridor, visibly agitated. All ambulances, out. There's an accident 2 blocks away. We'll have all the serious cases, they won't make it any further, prepare the operating room. Thinking had to be quick. The second surgeon was on vacation. It meant Daniela would have to perform the surgery herself. The radio reported that there was only one very critical patient. I'll manage. A premonition of something important and fateful turned into a strong feeling that gave her confidence. I'll keep my promise. I'll save a life, someone's and mine at the same time. Upon hearing Paula's cry, "Everything's ready for the surgery," Daniela unexpectedly walked to the mirror. A completely unfamiliar woman looked back at her, strong, brave, beautiful, but deeply unhappy. With the words, "It's time to save," she left the room and headed to the operating room. As the surgeon put on gloves, Paula provided the patient's details. A man, 49 years old. Numerous tissue ruptures and apparently internal organ damage. Severe blood loss. Daniela felt a treacherous weakness in her legs. It was exactly the same when her father was in this operating room. These were the exact details they told her husband, preparing for surgery. Forcing herself to focus, she approached the table and looked at the patient. "Oh my God! This just can't be!" The woman screamed and covered her face with her hands. Tears flowed from her eyes. "I won't be able to do it. It's him." What was happening became clear only to Paula, who knew the history of her unfortunate friend. She immediately guessed that her ex-husband was on the operating table. "Let's call another surgeon." "You can't. You don't have the right to operate on him. Your hands are shaking. You'll kill him and never forgive yourself." Her friend was right. For a moment, the words of her beloved university mentor came to mind. In the operating room, there are no people or feelings for you. You yourself must be as cold as a scalpel. The entire staff gathered in the operating room looked at Daniela with fear and sympathy, and after what she did the next minute, with boundless respect, if not admiration. Gathering herself together, wiping away the tears that choked her, Daniela asked herself only one question: what is he to me? And, without hesitation, she answered, everything, and approached the table. "I must save our lives. Once it was just the two of us." Daniela left the operating room after 6 endless hours. All this time she was collecting the body of Nicholas and her own soul in pieces. Without answering her colleagues' questions, she walked to the door. It turned out to be deep night outside. Breathing was difficult, but a huge, insurmountable burden fell from her soul. For the first time in several years she smiled and realized that she was happy again. Happy for keeping her restrained promise to her parents. Happy for saving a life. And not just one. By saving Nicholas's life, she brought her own out of non-existence. She wanted to dance again, run barefoot in the pouring rain without an umbrella, hug her children and cry, but this time from happiness. She finally understood for herself what it means. It turns out that happiness is being able to forgive, love, and let go while remaining human. Nicholas finally came to himself only 2 days later. All this time, Daniela wondered, should she continue to watch over him herself or entrust it to a colleague, an excellent specialist? But she decided to see it through to the end. They entered the ward together with Paula, who introduced the awakened patient to the chief physician of the clinic and, by the way, the surgeon who saved his life. Nicholas didn't say anything in response. Tears rolled down his cheeks. For the first time in several years, he smiled. It took another half an hour before he finally whispered, "I'm so glad to see you. Forgive me if you can." And Daniela could. Forgive, let go, and love again. She forgave herself and Nicholas. After a long recovery period, he returned to surgical practice, to his wife's clinic, turning from an ex into a real one again. A week after the operation, he told Daniela how many times over the years he had wanted to come back to her. "I even stood under your windows several times. But I was so weak that I couldn't look you in the eyes, just like back then, after your father's death. I'm a coward. My wife forbade me to communicate with our children and help them. I succumbed to her. I lived someone else's, a stranger's life. I was doing something I wasn't meant to, coming back to a cold home. I started drinking. Once I got so drunk that I dared and once again went to see you. That's how I ended up in the accident that, nevertheless, brought us back together. And how did you decide on the operation? Was it because of your promise to your father to save a life? Was it? Yes, it's our life together now. But now we're also responsible for it together. Another 20 years have passed. Daniela and Nicholas' children have grown up. Both have become doctors, but not surgeons. Their son works as a dentist in his own clinic, while their daughter chose to be an ophthalmologist, often joking. I just want to be able to see people clearly right away, so I won't make mistakes. And Daniela, from the vantage point of all that she has lived through, increasingly wonders if back then, after her father's death, the overconfident surgeon had had the courage to approach her, how would her life have turned out? It's clear that she probably wouldn't have married him, definitely not. Their children wouldn't have been born, and she wouldn't have become a surgeon either. It turns out, cowardice too can be fateful, and decisions left unmade sometimes turn into true happiness.